Hello and welcome to the Two-Man Power Trip of Wrestling. I'm your host, JP John Poz. With me today, very special guest and author of the new wrestling book, Lock Up, which we're going to find out a lot of info on today. He is Mr. Ray Lopez. Ray, welcome in. How you doing?
Pretty good, John. Hey, thanks for having me.
No problem. So what's going on in your world? What are you up to? And tell us, obviously, about Lock Up.
Well, yeah, we got an exciting project coming out in December, so we're about a little less than a month away from the national release. It's a different type of wrestling book than I think that's out there in the market, and we're just gearing up, trying to get people to know about it and get them excited about what it's all about.
So what is it? I know a lot of people always say, "Oh, this is a different wrestling book." Like, how is it different, and what's it all about? As far as I know, obviously wrestling, but just a little bit deeper.
Sure. Well, there's 13 chapters, and they can be read in any order the reader wants, non-sequential, and they all touch on different topics. Some of them
Yeah.
are more serious in nature. Like there's a chapter called "Race in the Ring." That basically talks about the treatment of minorities and how they've been treated in the Major League Professional Wrestling organization. Other chapters talk about culture and wrestling and the intertwining of them, such as one about Hollywood, there's one about football, there's one about reality TV and those things. But we try to frame them in a unique way. So, like the Hollywood one, for instance, is an award show titled The Kaufmans. It's a fictitious award show. And we've got some various categories, and we're discussing, who was the best fight by a wrestler in a movie, and who gave the best tag team performance, and who gave the best heel performance. So there's a lot of cool things out there, and those are just a few of the chapters.
So, kind of before we get into maybe some of the chapters, because we'll go back into that for just a second. What kind of inspired you to write the book, or why did you want to write the book?
Well, this was a project that kind of found its beginnings during the COVID time. I had some extra time on my hand when we were all locked down, as I'm sure we all did. So I needed a project to keep me from bouncing off the walls. And, I've always loved wrestling ever since I was a child till now. And I was like, well, maybe I could write a book about this. And then kind of framed it. I'm a big fan of Shea Serrano and his Basketball and Other Things and the other books that he's written. So, his format, I thought it fit perfect for the world of wrestling. And we kind of created a book from there.
Are you a big wrestling fan, or do you love the business?
Huge wrestling fan. Yep, I'm trying to keep up with it. There's so much shows on TV. It's hard for anybody to watch every single show on TV. But I'm at least logging 10 hours a week, watching wrestling. Yeah, I've been a fan pretty much my whole life.
What are you watching now? Like, do you watch just WWE, or you watch both WWE, or what else do you watch?
WWE, AEW, some TNA. I went. They had a show here in my home in San Antonio, where I'm from, recently. I think the Bound for Glory. So I was at that very entertaining show. So I try to watch it all, but mainly WWE and AEW would be the main ones. And I've been to some independent shows here, so I love all types of wrestling. But I guess those would be the main ones that I watch on the weekly basis.
So, did you grow up in San Antonio?
I did, born and raised, and I lived in about 5 cities throughout Texas as a whole throughout my life, just different jobs and going to different schools and stuff like that. But yeah, San Antonio's always been home.
So, what were you a fan of growing up? Like, was it that area? Was it like the Blanchard territory? Was it the WWF? And what were you a fan of growing up?
It was Blanchard territory, but by the time I grew up in a say where I really became a fan in the late '80s, early '90s. I was all into the mega powers and all that type of stuff. So really WWE and the way they were presenting WWE aligned right, just timeline wise, is where I was at in life as a child. I mean, they had all those characters, the Warrior, the Snake, your Hacksaw, everybody. So that really, all those characters really got me into it when I was a little kid, and I just kind of picked it up. I think it's been kind of funny the way it's kind of wrestling grew up, like with my lifespan, because when the Attitude Era hit and all that stuff, I was kind of a teenager then, so it almost felt like it perfectly fit from me being a little boy enjoying Hulkamania and all that jazz to once I became a teenager, we were in the Stone Cold era. It kind of fit like a glove. Funny how that worked out.
Yeah, I always thought the same thing. We're probably right around the same age. I thought the same thing. Like, man, this is perfect. I grew up a Hulkamaniac, and when I hit high school and stuff, and eventually get closer to the end of high school, it's like, wow, Steve Austin and the Attitude. This is like right up my alley. It was like perfect timing for life for us.
Yeah, I guess in many ways we kind of grew up with wrestling in many ways.
Yeah, but it's like, wow, that was perfect. Like the Hulkamania, say your prayers, take your vitamins, and then the Austin drinking your beer just worked out perfectly timeline wise for us.
It did. It did.
So when you look at wrestling as a whole, like you said, like obviously you're a fan, what inspires you to write about it though? Like, is it, do you just have so much passion for it, or why, why write about wrestling?
Sure. Yeah, it was kind of like a giant love letter to the whole world of professional wrestling. I think it's been there for a lot of people when they're going through things. It's a great escapism, and I've always just loved it and kind of wanted to pay tribute to it and pay homage to some of the greatest wrestlers that that are out there. So I guess that was really kind of the inspiration for it, is kind of just writing a giant like, here's my love of professional wrestling, and here's something that I think the fans are going to enjoy. And I was reading during COVID. Also, I was reading a lot, and I found that a lot of the books that I was reading were either biographical about wrestling. They were either biographical or they were about historical, about certain periods of times. And I was like, well, maybe we should do something different. And that's why we have like this book has some fan discussion type of stuff. One of them is called the Squared Circle Presidents, where we pick two wrestlers from starting in 1980 and moving on every 4 years on who would be the man to lead the wrestling world going forward. Kind of explain the history of the industry, what was going on at the time. We talk about the wrestlers we selected to be our two candidates, and then we talk about the ultimate winner and why. So I thought trying to present everything in a unique way would be something good that the fans would like, and I think it would, it would be my letter basically of love to professional wrestling, and hopefully people will like it and keep them interested in wrestling even more.
And you look at it too, it could be up for debate, right? I mean, that could be some good debates with people if they're reading what you have to say and like, no, I think this, and kind of create a debate that way.
Absolutely. I think that's part of the fun of this book, at least what I was striving for, is that, you don't always have to agree to me. And I doubt anybody will be like, oh, he got it right all these times. But, having that internal debate in your head and like, well, this guy should have been there. He missed the mark on that one. I think that's kind of the fun of reading. It's kind of like talking. I kind of trying to envision the book would be like if a bunch of wrestling fans came together in life and just started coming up with different topics to talk about and different ways to do it, and just kind of the fun of that. We try to bring it down to a book format. We also got some great illustrations in there. Each chapter has some great illustrations, and we've got some charts, some graphs, some timelines, some tables, all kinds of things to kind of help people enjoy the book.
Yeah, that's very cool. And obviously, wrestling fans, they love to debate. You know what I mean? If somebody says something's the best, somebody, right, they love to say, a little bit of a contrarian view, if you will.
Absolutely. And there's plenty to debate. We have another chapter where it's a fantasy football draft called the Slobber Knocker Draft, and the premise of this one is we take each of the decades from the 80s, 90s to the 10s and the 2000s, and you select each team is selecting only professional wrestlers to be a part of their team. They got to choose one from their decade, but of course, there's like with many people having 20 years, 30-year careers, there's a lot of overlap. So who's selecting what, and there's like some fun in there as far as that chapter is.
Man, that's a good idea. Where are you coming up with all these cool ideas from? I mean, it's kind of very, very different than different wrestling books you might read.
I think that was the goal of it, is to try to be different, to try to have something that hasn't been put out there before. I know a lot of the story of professional wrestling, especially for the hardcore fans, has been told over and over again. That's just the truth of it. And to try to find a new way to present the world of professional wrestling, I thought that was kind of the goal. There's another chapter where we talk about elaborate multi-man matchups, and this one kind of got the inspiration from this one came during the COVID period. Also, when I was watching AEW and they had that Mimosa match. Now, for better or worse, about the Mimosa match with Chris Jericho and Orange Cassidy, I was like, well, let's see if we can come up with some other outlandish type of matchups, and really just made up some fictional matches that I think involve multiple men, and I think people would be like, well, that'd be kind of cool to see live or in person if anybody ever did a match like that.
Yeah. Did you like that match, or did you not like that match? As far as the Mimosa Mayhem, whatever the heck it was called.
During that period of time, I was giving them a lot more slack because it was COVID. They were trying to be original. I mean, if it was done like today, I would say, okay, that was kind of a little corny.
Yeah.
But during COVID, I think they were working on overtime, and I appreciate the work that they were doing. And they were trying to be creative and having, without the fans and put on a wrestling show must have been a huge endeavor. So I give them credit for the creativity. Was it a little corny? Sure it was, but that's kind of some of the fun of it. I would say, it was all right. I wasn't too high or low about it either way.
Man, just looking back or thinking back, I know you're trying stuff, you're trying to be different, but I don't know that kind of missed the mark for me anyway. I didn't like that at all. I thought that was a little weird.
I mean, I think that was the problem with that COVID wrestling is that they were just trying to do everything and hope that it became out a masterpiece. And WWE had the problems with their cinematic matches, and are they going to be great or are they going to look like a low budget B movie? That must have been a tough time creatively to like give this a shot. We can't rely on the energy and excitement that a live crowd can bring.
It does seem like some of the cinematic stuff WWE did was great. Like I loved Undertaker and AJ. Some of the other stuff that they did, big miss. Like just wasn't good. It was a weird era. I mean, you had to try it to see what would work and what wouldn't. But yeah, there was some big misses in that era, no doubt.
I agree. I still scratch my head about that. I think it was Bray Wyatt and Braun Strowman match, and yeah, that one was. I still scratch my head on that one.
Oh God, yeah. Oh yeah. Not good at all. Yeah, they did some wacky stuff, but it was one of those things where it's like you said, you almost got to give them a little bit of credit for trying. Like, what else are you going to do? You got to see what's going to work in this crazy COVID period.
Yeah, I mean, you got to give points for creativity, and sometimes it worked. Like I thought those stadium stampedes that AEW did were cool and fun and original, and when they were doing those flips or the drivers from the 10-yard line all the way across the field, and
Yep.
they had some cool moments. I thought some of it. That's the problem with trying new things. I guess some of it worked, some of it didn't. How that's I found that problem working into this book. We had chapters that I was working on and got far, but I don't think they worked. So they ended up on the cutting room floor and didn't make it. So I understand there's a hit and miss type of mentality, and you hope that you hit them, but who knows if you do.
So also in the book, you're talking about certain guys in certain periods. What's their best period too? Is that where you were kind of breaking it down into as well with some of the wrestlers?
Well, there's one chapter called "The Tournament of Jericho" that's very kind of like that. Now, on this book, we picked 8 different versions of Chris Jericho, and we put out the year and down to the specific match that he was like this version of Chris Jericho from this particular match, and we pit them against each other. So one of the funds of that one is trying to find the best version of Chris Jericho through like a mock tournament of that one. But we break down many wrestlers in different ways. We talked about them in the presidency. We also have a chapter called "The Math and Science of a Wrestler," and for this one, we took 30 wrestlers and made made 3 kinds of graphs with them. One was basically we're breaking down their gimmick and their overall persona using the classic gimmicks of professional wrestling, the heartthrob, the monster heel, all the classic gimmicks. Basically, I think nowadays a lot of these wrestlers, it's very hard for a wrestler to be like, that's your gimmick, you're that guy. Nowadays, I think wrestlers have a variety of gimmicks, but I think most wrestlers are still relying on some combination of those classic gimmicks. They just kind of blend some of these together, and that kind of forms their ultimate character. We also had a graph called Golden Time, where we basically break down how long were some of the iconic wrestlers, and we did 30 of them, how long were their in-ring careers for? How long did they perform? And by that, I mean, we took their in-ring career, but we also subtracted time for if they missed for injury for a significant period of time, if they did a non-compete clause, if they were in rehab or just on vacation. If they weren't basically actively on the screen or in front of the fans, then we kind of like deducted that time. Then we calculated how much time they spend as champion with, a major gold, the mid card gold, the lower card gold, and kind of broke it down to be like, well, okay, how much time did wrestler X spend as the world champion of his career? And I think some of those numbers would be surprising to even the most hardcore fans. It took some work, but hey, we did it for you, and it's all there in the book for you to enjoy.
I like that too because there's even well myself obviously included, but some really hardcore fans that love like looking at this stuff and love diving into it. I was talking to my buddy working on something with him, and we were going over certain wrestlers' careers. Like, man, he had more matches, than I realized. I'm like, yeah, he's like carrying the company for a couple of years there. How many matches the guy's had, and then it's like, wow, his run was longer than I thought. Or another guy, this guy's run was shorter than I thought. So yeah, that is really interesting, especially for a guy like me who just I know I love that type of stuff with wrestling. Really delve into the guy's career.
Yeah, and those are some of the surprising details that I can't believe. One of the wrestlers had such a long career, and you would think that you would have seen like some other wrestlers, and they logged more years, but they really didn't because they had big hiatuses or something like that. And it kind of narrows down, and it'll show you like just how short some of the iconic guys' careers were, because there were some super legends that didn't maybe even log a decade, and then there were some guys that logged over 3 decades. And watch that percentage of how much time were they trusted to be the world champion of their career. I think that kind of sheds some light on like who all these wrestlers' careers. So we did 30 of them. Use that Magic Royal Rumble number, and they're probably about the 30 guys you would think. And we have a little offering a little more insight in their career.
Anybody surprise you just off the top of your head more than anybody else? Like, wow, I can't believe that.
Oh, The Rock surprise. I mean, he was a surprise. The Rock was a surprise, and not a surprise. We've known The Rock for such a long time, and he's just been part of culture. So and part of like most people's lives with the movies, or you watch him in the movies, or you see him in the matches. But he hasn't been an active wrestler for that long because he took so much time off of work and things like that. And I know Ric Flair had a long storied career, but even seeing how long it was surprising to me. I was like, he wrestled for a very long time at a high level, and all the titles that he won. Those two would come to mind as some surprises.
I feel like Steve Austin might surprise some people, and even Ultimate Warrior might surprise some people with the length of time, whether it be not so long. You know what I mean?
Sure. And Goldberg too. There's a list of them
Yeah.
that didn't really have that lengthy career. But they made a huge impact, and they had the belt multiple times, and it's funny to see how much of their career was spent as a champion and as a major champion.
It's funny when you think about it. It's like, man, I thought the guy's run was longer, but they could be so impactful. It feels like it was longer just because of the impact that they had. It's almost like a long lasting impact despite maybe a short run.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these guys just come and go and see them, and I tried to put parameters on how we're judging things, and we laid it all out there in the kind of the intro in this chapter. Like take the Roman Reigns for instance. That was he was when he was holding the belt, he was only around every once in a while. So do we stop and start the clock over and over again? Well, ultimately, I decided. I mean, how could he not be active if he's their world champion? So right. I think we put a rule in there like, hey, if you're a world champion and you still have the belt, all that time is counting. And the same thing happened with Ric Flair back when he broke his back in that airplane wreck back in I think it was the 70s or the 80s.
70s, yep.
Yeah, 70s. He still came to the belt the whole time. So even though he missed a couple months of being in the ring, he was still the champion. So those all things counted. There was some struggles with trying to put it together, but we laid it all out there, so I think everybody can see where we were going and follow along.
How about some wrestlers in movies and television? Or you're covering that as well, right?
Right. That's part of one of our chapters where we talk about television performances, and a lot of these, who was the best heel, who did the best animated, who had the best fight sequence in a movie. There's a lot of interesting topics to talk about. What was the best documentary? I mean, there have been some great. What was the best film about wrestling? Period. Which there have been, many great films and TV shows about them. So yeah, we dive into the world of how Hollywood is intertwined with professional wrestling, and I think right now it's probably like an all-time. It's got to be at an all-time high with The Rock, Cena, and Bautista being some of Hollywood's like top heavy hitters,
and not just being in random like family movies. Like Hogan, obviously, there were more family-oriented movies. I mean, The Rock and Cena and Batista, they were in like legit big time movies. Hell, Batista's in one of the biggest movies of all time. So it's one of those things where it has changed as far as wrestlers and movies.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot more range. I think before they were playing either the serious tough guy or the goofy tough guy. They had like one or seemed
Right.
like they had used to have one or two options. I mean, either be the serious tough guy or goofy. Now, you have somebody like Bautista. He can be the psychotic in a horror film. He can be the superhero. He can be the introspective guy. He can play. He's got like a lot of range. I don't think Hollywood probably trusted wrestlers to have that kind of range up until recently. But I think Cena shows it too. Cena shows his comedy chops, and he's got some great timing. If you ask me, and of course he can do the action stuff too. So I think the range of all these wrestlers is showing.
Yeah, I feel like even like Piper was a certain role. Hogan obviously always played a certain role. Now it's like Batista; he could play different roles. He could even do, he could be Drax. He do some little bit of comedy. He could also be Inspector, and he's playing, the big henchman. He's in Dune playing a great villain. I mean, it just definitely they're giving him different spots, but obviously they can act too. These guys, they're pretty good actors.
I mean, I would say so. I think all three of those guys are doing a fantastic job in the movies that they're in, and they're carrying it. They're getting the receipts. They're showing they can do it. So I think the world of Hollywood needs to keep looking at the world of wrestling. And sadly for the world of wrestling, hopefully they don't pry too many of your beloved wrestlers away from us like they did a couple of these guys.
Yeah, you take The Rock away. Like you said, he didn't have that long of a run technically because he got pulled away from Hollywood all the time. So many years he got pulled away.
I mean, you can't blame him for doing it. I think any rational human being would do it, especially when you see the money attached to Hollywood as compared to being a top professional wrestler. It's incomparable. But I mean, man, we imagine all the moments that we could have had with The Rock if he was stayed a
Yeah.
wrestler full time. I mean, we're happy for what he gives us, but I guess we're always wanting more. But I suppose that's what he wants us to be feeling.
Do cameos count in that, or is it you got to be kind of more of a starring role, or got to be in it more?
Well, there's a bunch of different categories in there, like any particular award show. One of them is, outstanding cameo in like a
Oh,
television
nice.
season. For example, I think we have one for in a comedic television performance and one in a dramatic television performance. So yeah, we do talk about some of the cameos. I mean, who didn't love when they saw Hacksaw Jim Duggan on Harry and the Hendersons or the Bushwhackers and Family Matters or all these shows when we were growing up, and you have these wrestlers make their guest appearances. So we definitely talk about the cameos they've done on mainstream television.
Vader on Boy Meets World was great. Yeah, there's always
He
good
was
ones.
great. He was great. 3 appearances, I believe, and they were all good.
Yeah. Movie wise too, they're always good ones. Even Terry Funk, Over the Top, Roadhouse. I mean, always some good stuff with
Yeah,
cameos with wrestlers.
yeah. And we had a category: best supporting actor, best lead actor, because wrestlers have had some range, and sometimes they're the supporting actor on top for whoever the main guy is, and sometimes they're the main guy. But we've kind of explored it all and talked about a lot of Hollywood in there. I think people will like it. We also put it in a timeline of significant roles of professional wrestlers in film, so you'll see a lot of the roles that all these wrestlers have obtained. Just with a quick look at that timeline.
When you look at just everything, kind of to me anyway, maybe I'm crazy, but I think you'll agree. Everything is pro wrestling. You know what I mean? I mean, they got football players, they got athletes, they got basketball players. I mean, they've got actors. Then they go into the acting world. Everything is pro wrestling, right?
I mean, I think so. I think our society might be closer to pro wrestling than it's ever been before. I mean, just look at how they influenced the world of politics this
Yeah.
time around. You had legends coming out supporting one kind of candidate or the other. Yeah, the wrestlers are all over the place now. They're in every stream of society. It was kind of the title of this book is Lock Up, like the old Lock Up, but it's also talking about regular society and professional wrestling and how they've kind of meshed up. Now, there's a lot of wrestling talk in there. There's also some societal talk about how it's all kind of been intermingling.
Man, politics has legit turned into wrestling. They're getting entrances, they're getting theme songs, they're even using wrestling music. Hell, for Pete's sake, they're using wrestling songs sometimes. It is just crazy. They're cutting promos. You know what I mean? It is politics is really stealing from wrestling a lot.
I mean, wrestling has a unique ability, I believe, amongst a lot of other forms of entertainment to really connect with the crowd. I mean, to really connect with people. And, I think politicians are taking note of that and kind of observing how professional wrestlers really get over with the fans and really connect with those people. And you need to have those connections in today's world of politics. No matter what side you're on, you need to have those connections. And taking a page from a professional wrestler's book to learn how to get them, to learn how to connect with people, I think that'd just be a smart move.
So as we hit the wind down, we head towards the finish. Who is your all-time favorite? Who's your favorite wrestler of all time?
Well, I'm a big Shawn Michaels guy, being from San Antonio. Gotta love HBK. There's so many of them that I love. Ric Flair, Randy Savage, The Rock. I had to say, I guess I'm going with Shawn Michaels. Just he's representing San Antonio, and yeah, I'm fortunate. I think he's one of the best technical wrestlers in the ring, probably ever. So I'd go with Shawn Michaels. HBK's. I'll say HBK. That's my guy. It goes
Do you
back
have
and
a fa-
forth. Sometimes The Rock too.
Oh, nice. Do you have a favorite match?
I mean, probably, for the passing of the torch, the ending of the eras, it would be a Shawn Michaels one. It'd probably be Shawn Michaels and Ric Flair at WrestleMania. Just kind of loved how they capped off Rick's career. Legendary guy. I wish he would have stayed that way. But I thought that was a fantastic
Yeah.
match. But there are so many of them. And one of the chapters we got in this book is called the Wrestling Match Hall of Fame. So there's all these Hall of Fames in the world of professional wrestling. There's wrestler, all these regional ones, the WWE one, obviously. So we picked 8 matches and we broke them down and put them in our match Hall of Fame. So we give you statistics on the match. We gave you we talk about the build on it, what led to the match, where it was at the time. We talk about the match itself and just, how it played out in the ring, break it down. And then we talk about the legacy of it. So, matches are really, that is the bread and butter of professional wrestling. So some of the greatest matches of all time, I think we put in there. There can be a new fun way for fans to appreciate some of the classics that I'm sure they've watched many times.
I love that. I'm just a huge fan of just finding out not what other people think of great matches, but like, hey, am I in agreement with this being a Hall of Fame match or a great match or a quote unquote 5-star match and different things. I love kind of doing that. And then, oh, I haven't seen that one. I'm gonna have to watch it. And then maybe that goes on my list. Like, man, now I'm gonna have to rewatch it. Make it a rewatchable, if you will. So I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and that's one of the great things about professional wrestling is the ability to rewatch it and go back and relive those moments. And so I think people really enjoy the matches and how we break them down and kind of describe the action that's going in there, and then the legacy of them. Some of these matches have great legacies that are. Most of them are still felt today because they're just monumental matches. That match didn't go down, professional wrestling just wouldn't be the same as we know it
It's
today.
crazy. It's crazy how they literally live forever. Hogan Andre from '87, that literally lives forever. It's just Hogan Rock from 20 plus years ago now. Believe it or not, 20 plus years lives forever. Crazy.
There's so many. It was such a hard time selecting 8. So maybe if there's a sequel, I could do more. But try to narrow it down. I think the original WWE Hall of Fame was one guy with Andre. I think the second class was like 7. So I've one match is too little for a chapter. So we put them together, class 1 and 2, and said, okay, 8's our number. And so I think fans will enjoy it.
Nice. I love your thought process with a lot of these things. The 30 with the Rumble, the 8 with the Hall of Fame. I like this.
Yeah, there was a lot of care, a lot of attention went into the details. A lot of attention went into those details.
So give us one last big push for the book, Lock Up Professional Wrestling in Our World.
Well, this is going to be a fun wrestling book, kind of one that you've never read before. It's going to have illustrations. It's going to have all these chapters. We're talking about the worlds from reality TV to, to politics, to sports, to everything in between. We're discussing it all. It's all in there with graphs, charts, tables. A lot of work and research went into it. I think once you check it out, check out the illustrations, check out the drawings. It's going to be a real fun read. It's going to be a read that we've broken down so you can read it at your own pace. Take your time, go from chapter to chapter, bounce around it. It's going to be a fun read. So check it out.
And you've done something here that's a little different, and you've made it unique, and you've made it different in the wrestling world. Because like you said before, a lot of the wrestling books are exactly the same. You kind of you know what you're getting into for. And very cool that you decided to kind of break the trend there, buck the trend there, and do a different and really, I don't know, try to be more unique and go about it a different way. So that's a very cool thing to do.
Yeah, I think people are going to like the presentation. I think people are going to look through the book and set it down. Wrestling is such a visual medium, and we all love it because we see the spectacular feats, physical feats that they do, the elaborate costume, the great entrances, the mind-boggling physiques. I mean, so I was trying to keep the spirit of professional wrestling in mind when creating this book. And for such a visual medium, we had to have lots of visualness. So that's why we got those illustrations in there. We put those graphs, we put charts, we put tables, we got brackets, and then we have a lot of wrestling talk writing that I think fans are just going to love once they sink into it.
Where can everybody find the book?
So we go to the publisher's website at mascotbooks.com and look under lockup. It'd be available now. If you hit them up, I think you'll probably get the book faster to you than otherwise, but we're also going to be available. We're also available right now for pre-order on Amazon and Barnes & Nobles. So just look up for Lockup Professional Wrestling World on either Mascot Books, Amazon, or Barnes & Nobles, and get your copy.
Where can everybody find you social media-wise?
Sure, I'm on the old Twitter machine. It's still going to be Twitter to me. Hit me up at Lucha Lockup on the old Twitter machine. If you want a signed copy or anything, slide into the DMs and we can make that happen.
Anywhere else that anybody can find you, or is it just Twitter?
Really just Twitter. I have a couple of Instagram and Facebook pages, but those are really kind of dormant at the time. So it's mostly out. Fans can find me out on Twitter, and that's exclusive to wrestling. Really, we're just talking wrestling on my Twitter.
All right. Great stuff. Ray, thank you so much. Everybody, check out Lockup and get the book. Appreciate all the time today, Ray. Thank you so much.
Thank you, John. Appreciate your time.